Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of Uncanny Treks. We are covering episode 5 of season 2 of X-Men 92, Weapon X Lies and DVDs. Not to be confused, Matt, not to be confused with Weapon X Lies and Videotape. I'm Bob in Cascadia. That's Matt in the Southland. Matt, how you doing this evening?
Doing great tonight, Bob. Man, this episode was exactly what I expected it to be. I almost felt, with the exception of one species that showed up, but other than that, it was what I expected. A bunch of Wolverine's former friends and enemies get together and they go and investigate a base and learn about themselves.
We can go ahead and say spoilers. We've been bad about it this season, but people listening to us know our deal by now, I would think. But yeah, we're going to do some spoilers. So yeah, I do have to say, on the one hand, you're right that this went down exactly like one standard length of a Wolverine Weapon X episode. But on the other hand, the Brood thing was a pretty big curveball.
It was a huge curveball for multiple reasons that we'll get into as we dig apart and take apart this episode. I do want to point out, too, that the title itself, though, Weapon X, Lies, and DVDs, that's a playoff of course, Weapon X, Lies, and Videotape, which was Season 4, Episode 16, Bob. But it's also a play on what else?
A late 80s movie. I can't remember the year's movie, I believe. I think it is 89 because I think it won the Cannes Palme d'Or that year instead of Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. And that was a controversial win, if I'm remembering correctly. But it's an erotic thriller called Sex, Lies, and Videotape. I watched it a couple years ago. Pretty good film. I like Soderbergh in general. Not everything he does, but I like him in general. That's a pretty good debut film. Even though Do the Right Thing is also an interesting movie, I don't think it's unjust that Sex, Lies, and Videotapes beat out Do the Right Thing.
Yeah, I have seen Do the Right Thing. I have not seen Sex, Lies, and Videotape. However, I will say that, man, the title was very topical back then.
It's got your boy James Spader in it, if I remember correctly.
That is
So
correct.
late 80s James Spader role, yeah. Matt, one other thing I didn't put in the notes, but I was just thinking as we were talking about this being one standard length of a Wolverine and Weapon X episode, it does kill off Kane and Maverick, which on the one hand, who cares? But on the other hand, those guys were big deals in the early 90s, and Maverick in particular had a couple of ongoing series that went a while. Now, granted, I don't think that Mavericks had a series recently, but it's maybe a little interesting that they use Kane and Maverick as like fodder for what's an Aliens ripoff, right?
Yeah, Kane and Maverick here, if they're your favorite characters, folks, they're going to die, of course. We saw Kane in the original run just to get the background.
I think he's in an alternate future. He's on one of Cable's X-Men teams fighting Apocalypse. It's just a cameo, I believe.
And then, of course, we did have Maverick. He showed up in 2 episodes back in the day.
I think even been 3.
Primarily in flashbacks. I know specifically there was one flashback where Xavier entered Sabretooth's mind. I think that was the first time we saw him appear.
Oh, yeah, that's maybe season 1.
And there were no spoken lines there, but then later on in the episode we mentioned earlier in season 4, he did appear there with an uncredited voice actor, and he did have a German accent.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if he'd had a German accent or not, because he's got a noticeable German accent in this episode, but I couldn't remember if in X-Men 92 he did or not, so I'm glad you clarified. The other thing that was a little bit of a surprise, in my mind, Lady Deathstrike is a pretty big deal in the comics, in my vague memory, even though within a couple of years we covered all of the X-Men 92 episodes, but in my vague memory, I think of Lady Deathstrike being a bigger deal in X-Men 92 than she was. She's only in that 2-part Phoenix Saga prelude from, I guess that's season 3. Of X-Men 92, she's not in any of the other Weapon X Wolverine flashback episodes, which is surprising.
The reason she was so famous, I think, back then and why we have a fond memory of her is because she was literally the female Wolverine before we had X-23. She had the claws. She was his female counterpart.
The Phoenix Saga prelude was a big deal to us as kids, and also the fact that I had that X-Men Classic issue where it's Wolverine being pursued in the snow by Lady Deathstrike.
She was all over the place, too, back then.
Yeah, for sure. Matt, do you want to read the list? We got a lot of cameos. In one axis, we have cameos, and then in another axis, we have mentions. But Morph was overactive this episode. Do you want to read off all the Morph?
Morph's outfit on here was awesome. I like this stealth outfit. It reminds me of the Wolverine action figure.
I took it to be Morph's version of a Weapon X uniform.
Morph becomes Sasquatch, Puck, Ben Grimm, The Thing, Vindicator, Deadpool, Silver Samurai, Cyclops, and Spider-Man. Which is cool because they chose a lot of Alpha Flight characters, which fits the whole...
Listeners, I'm watching this and taking notes at the same time, and so I'm looking away from the screen maybe more than I would if I were just watching it. And so I kept having the thing of I was taking notes on the Morph cameos, and I wouldn't see Morph turn into an Alpha Flight member, and I would see Morph as the Alpha Flight member, and I'd be like, oh man, are we doing an Alpha Flight crossover, which wouldn't be out of character episode. But then I'd back it up and be, no, they very clearly show Morph turning in. Those Alpha Flight characters, Morph going in as Puck was very cool. That was an interesting use of Puck's powers as Morph messes up some brood. I didn't expect to come away from a Weapon X episode being Puck is the star, but Puck was the star of this episode action-wise, I thought.
Morph turns to Silver Samurai. They clarified how their powers work. Okay?
I did.
Because Silver Samurai has that sword, and the sword shattered quick. It was an easy break. So that to me shows the level or the limit to their powers. That was a good way to say, okay, because Silver Samurai swords they're indestructible, right? They don't break. They're adamantium.
That's right.
Apparently this show is going to be running for, they're talking recently, there's rumors that 10 seasons, something stupid. I don't think it's true, okay? Yeah, they're saying they have enough to do 10 seasons of this if they really wanted to. That's crazy. I think that's just a pipe dream, but that is a rumor going around.
Right now, we know for sure we're getting at least 4 seasons, right?
Correct, yeah.
I would say that I would rather they, instead of going 10 seasons of X-Men 97, maybe give a couple of those seasons to Spider-Man or Fantastic Four is what I would say.
I don't think there's enough X-Men for them to do 10 seasons. But they did do, 5 in the original run?
That's true, although at least one of them was very short, right?
Yeah, very short, and the first season wasn't as long.
One other cameo question that came to mind, Matt, before we get to the titular cameo, but in the opening credits, we see Forge in the opening credits. Was this the first time Forge has been in the opening credits?
Yeah, it's the first time he got his own title card and stuff. And his title card's based on the font and style of Marvel Snap, which I thought was a cool little Easter egg.
Were you surprised that we got the Brood in this episode?
Bob, didn't we already get the Brood way back in season 4, episode 19?
Love in Vain is the episode, I believe. And yes, it's the Brood, but I don't think they ever say the words.
They don't. They're the colony. What I love about that episode, though, is you get the G-rated Brood invasion versus this, which is the real deal.
Which is really getting to the Brood's roots as alien xenomorph knockoffs here.
If you have never watched Love in Vain, and you watch this episode of X-Men 97, go back to Disney Plus and find it and watch it just so you can see how far we've come with the Brood and what they're able to show on television, on a cartoon.
That's crazy.
It is insane.
Even though we've come a long way with animation, I just want to complain that we haven't come far enough because Morph does not say the words about Omega Red that I really wanted to hear, which was mutant death factor, because that's what Omega Red has as a power. I really wanted Morph to say mutant death factor, a concept that makes no sense, but I love.
I'm thankful Morph went back and just went over Omega Red's thing again, because I always have trouble. Anytime I see Omega Red, I'm like, I don't remember what his spiel is, but then there's always some character there to explain it to me, so I appreciate that, Morph.
Yeah. Matt, we had another series of cameos, which was unexpectedly, we actually do get a lot of DVDs in this episode. I thought that was the updated gimmick of the title. I didn't expect there would be a lot of DVDs in this episode. But we get a lot of labeled DVDs that are associated with the Weapon Plus programs, experiments. So do you want to read down the list of characters we have listed on the DVDs in the Weapon Plus program?
Sure, and as we go through, I'll just tell you what I know them as real quick. There's some I don't know. Can you kind of just help me out?
Most of these that you don't know, I also don't
know. Okay, so
Yeah.
if we both agree we don't know, we're just going to say we don't know. So Bob, X-23, that's female Wolverine. That's, everybody knows that. Ajax.
Heard of him, didn't look him up, don't know what his deal is.
Me neither, so we're going to get Aurora.
She's a member of Alpha Flight.
Yep, I know that one. Phantom X, who
we talked about, and you thought Phantom X might show up, and I thought,
hey, there he is. Bobby showed up. I was right.
Yeah, I was going to say we were both right because he didn't show up, but he was mentioned. So we were both right. He didn't show up, but he did.
There he is, Phantom X. We all know he has his own little world and his nervous system's on the outside of his body. Very simple.
In his UFO, which is named Eva.
It talks, and you can live inside of it.
He's based off a really fun Italian movie maybe we should watch for the podcast called Danger Diabolique.
If this sounds interesting, folks, trust me, it's very interesting. If you have not gone back and read Morrison's run on X-Men, get to it. All right.
Matt was about to say you should listen to our coverage of Morrison X-Men. Then he remembered we haven't released her.
All right, here we go. And then we have Wolverine, Bob. Of course, everybody knows Wolverine. We have Silver Fox.
She was in, I believe, the Sex, Lies, and Videotapes episode. She's an old romantic interest of Wolverine and a member of the Weapon X team or whatever they're called.
Weapon 18. I don't know what that is, Bob. Do you know what Weapon 18 is?
Weapon 18 is what they actually show the DVD of, right? So It's the experiments of combining the Brood with Weapon Plus test subjects seems to be what Weapon 18 is.
Weapon 18, Brood subjects. Next, you have the Cyborg, PSI Borg.
Heard of it, don't know what it is.
Mastodon.
Heard of him, don't know who he is.
Not the one from Superman.
Not the one from Superman.
Winter Soldier. Heard of him?
We don't have to explain Winter Soldier.
All right, Weapon 6.
Usually Weapon 6 is Luke Cage. I'm not sure if that'll be the case here because I think sometimes Weapon 6 is something else, but usually Weapon 6 is Luke Cage.
Ant.
Heard of him, don't know.
Kane was there in this episode, so we're good there. Sabretooth was there. Agent Zero, who is Maverick.
One of Maverick's series was, I think, called Agent Zero.
Kimura.
Heard of her, don't know what her deal is.
Worm.
Yeah, I don't know any of the rest.
Sluggo and Kestrel.
I know I've heard the names of those last four, but I can't attach characters. Honestly, listeners, it didn't seem to be worth my time to open up the really glitchy and slow Marvel Wiki site.
If you're interested, you can always go back and look at those. But I was just glad to see that they listed characters who we haven't seen animated versions of yet.
Deep diving with this list. Listeners, I want you to know that I got this before the websites did, so I had to press pause and take notes. I did not consult a website for this. I had one other kind of broad question to end on, but I didn't know what else you wanted to say about Weapon X lies and news.
I appreciated the episode. I do think it's on the same level as the original Runs episode where it was centered on Weapon X. I was surprised by the inclusion of the Brood. I was glad to see scary Brood that were killing and tearing people apart, and they did show some pretty grisly looking cut up stuff, probably in the PG-13, that area.
Definitely in the more advanced. So I guess my question, and granted, we are getting pretty close to the end of the season because I think we're only 9 episodes this season. So we only have 4 episodes left, and they may not do the same structure that they did with season 1. But if I'm remembering right, season 1, the last 3 episodes were basically a 3-parter. So we might only have 1 standalone episode and then a 3-parter to end the season. So in a certain sense, I get that they gotta reset Wolverine and give him his adamantium back. But I did want to ask, do you think they maybe should have milked Wolverine's bone claws a little longer? He hasn't really been back in the present any time at all because of the way they structured the opening 3 episodes. So is it a little bit of a shame that we didn't get, because I think in the comics it was years he had the bone claws, right? Fatal Attractions happened in the early 90s and he didn't get restored adamantium till the late 90s, I want to say. Did you think they should milk bone claws a little more, or were you just happy to put the bow on it and move on to other things?
Bob, after I heard your question, I really asked the same thing because after watching the episode and him coming out with the claws and the shining, he's in the end of the episode, he's looking at him and you can see his reflection. And I'm like, what was the point? Was that the whole point in this? Just to getting back to the status quo of having the claws? Does it really matter that much? To me, it's more of a cosmetic type of thing at this point because he still was doing the same stuff. He didn't seem like he was really in much more danger. He did seem more hunched over. Did you catch that? Without the steel?
I didn't, but that's a good point now that you say it. I can visualize it now.
I just don't know if there were meant to be ramifications of him having the bone claws, other than that they break a lot and he screams in pain, but they still grow back. His healing factor still worked the same way.
To defend the episode slightly, they probably did need to do a Wolverine Spotlight episode in season 2 because they didn't really do one in season 1. And if you're going to do a Wolverine Spotlight episode, you might as well get him his claws back. So that makes sense on that level. And you're right that on the one hand, okay, all this for cosmetic change, but on the other hand, I'm not saying that the show was going to do this, but potentially in season 3 or season 4, if the show wants to come back to the Weapon Plus program and Phantom X, or it wants to come back to the Brood, or it wants to come back to both together and do more, this did lay some groundwork where they can do that. So I don't think it was totally wasted effort.
It was not wasted. This is a better telling of the whole Return to Weapon X story.
I don't remember how we got the claws back in the comics. I don't know if that was better or worse, about the same.
This was very generic. It was you throw him in the machine and he's good. Doesn't even tear up his clothes, or barely. Just rip his shirt a little bit.
Yeah.
He'll be all right.
That is interesting that they're more concerned about him going through Brood possession than they are concerned about, showing the pain of the Weapon X, adamantium.
There was too much story there when you did factor in the Brood. I did seeing, though, did you like seeing Brutified Logan again for a second time?
Oh, did we see that in Love and...
We did, yes. was not as cool.
Okay.
He got infected, and his healing factor was the reason that Rogue was able to absorb and heal herself.
She absorbed it.
He had the same issue in that he was able to fight off the brood infection or the alien infection. Here,
Say my memory of the Brood saga in the comics, where Wolverine is possessed but overwrites it with the healing factor. That's my paramount memory of the Brood.
As it
episode.
should.
Even though we watched that episode a couple of years ago, it didn't mind.
as it should, Bob. Let's start character of the week, Bob.
All right, Matt, who'd you go with?
I'm going to go with Morph, Bob, because they had it going on this episode. And I really liked the comparison to the fox, the Japanese folklore fox, Tomo, and they're the sidekick to Wolverine. That was very interesting and a good way to explain their dynamic.
That's fun. There weren't a lot of choices, especially if you're like me and you can't go with Sabretooth. And Maverick and Kane aren't really around enough to go with. So I'm going to go with Wolverine, but mostly just for that scene where he trisects a brood with his claws. That was pretty amazing. Pretty gory, pretty amazing. So Wolverine, but only because he trisected a brood head.
And then, Bob, in next week, episode 6 is entitled Danger.exe. Now, you and I both know what that's about.
Oh, are they going to do the sentient danger room?
Of course they are. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that was the episode title, and I'm not shocked, but I wasn't thinking about danger, but it makes sense going to danger.
I'm excited, too, that we may be actually going back to the mansion for a Danger Room specific episode. An episode that's a little more compact or with the familiar setting of what we had in X-Men 92.
It'll be interesting to see how they handle Danger, because on the one hand, she's a pretty interesting character, but on the other, as I recall, the way they tell the story in Astonishing X-Men, it makes Professor X look incredibly villainous.
Yes.
And so it's going to be interesting to see, do they maintain that, or do they try to smooth it over a little bit where it doesn't make Professor X look like such a jerk? I guess that might be a Forge spotlight episode. And it's also interesting because Danger, I feel, had already peaked her relevance and wasn't coming up much in the late 2010s. But there is an interesting way that the way Hickman reimagined the X-Men mythos is the struggle with artificial intelligence and House of X, Powers of 10, really kind of sidelined Danger and Karima Shapinder and a couple of the other X-Men over the years who were robotic or part robot, right? Because they didn't really fit in this paradigm of mutants versus robots very well. And so it is interesting that in light of that they're maybe going in the direction of Danger. I look forward to seeing that.
I just love the title too. Danger.exe is an executable file, which back in the Windows days, now you have an iPad or whatever, you're not going to have to open the files and see things like that. You don't have to see the extensions. It's all there for you. But back in the day, you remember we had to manipulate files and change their extensions to turn them into what we wanted them to be, and you had to play with it in the file manager. Yeah, love it. It's bringing back memories.
Matt's revisiting all the media nostalgia,
Yeah.
the DVDs this episode or the executable programs. So,
That's what I love about
Right.
X-Men 97. Every time I see the 97, okay, I got to take my brain back to that time. I love it. That's a good thing about these shows.
Nice. Listeners, join us in 1 week for the next episode of X-Men 97 with Uncanny Treks covering it. I'm Bob in Cascade. Yeah, that's Matt in the Southline. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks for listening.